And we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wheel Talk, the podcast with a guy who is might die on the live stream from exhaustion, whose head might explode. But yeah, a guy in a wheelchair and a girl in a wheelchair. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome, welcome. Yeah, we were not sure whether we were going to be able to pull this off today, and here we are.
Here we are. I'm coming from you live from Aix-les-Bains. I am on the croupier training course for those of you regular listeners. I'm doing a croupier course in French, and I've been like cramming for it a lot. And I thought that the French was going to be really challenging, which it has been. Oh my God, I've been so lost in French. But yeah, I'm here and I'm surviving. The second day is over, but it's been mentally taxing enormously. And then yeah, we didn't think we were going to do a pod, and then I was like, you know what? Let's just do a pod.
So my first question is the mentally taxing part. Is it literally just the language barrier, or is it the level of information, like the volume of information?
You know what? That's a very, very, very good question. So I've been practicing my French like loads and loads and loads and loads and loads to try and you know get up to the level. I've been listening to this like French like playlist of like poker. It's like Bienvenue à Poker Stars. Je m'appelle Benjamin Bronto, and he's like explaining all the rules.
Yeah.
Le meilleur content sur YouTube. Oubliez pas s'abonner. So anyway, it's just really funny. But
Yeah.
he speaks like that. He speaks like really like explaining the rules of poker just like that. I'm in the room. We're in a massive like high ceilinged like castle, like where this casino is, and everyone's like and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's not, I've been practicing with Benjamin Bronto, and he's like speaking so clearly. But French people don't speak like him. Like
No.
they just mumble, and I'm like, oh my God. And then everyone was just mumbling, and I'm like, oh, I'm so underwater. I have no idea what anyone's saying. So we had this like introduction, like, oh, why don't you go around and introduce yourself a little bit? Praise the Lord, they started in that direction. So I had like 15 people to introduce themselves so I could rehearse what I was gonna say. If they'd have been like, start with you, I'd have been like, sorry, what did you say? I was so lost, man. I've been winging it so much.
Oh, that's
Um,
That's really hard. I have to say that Italian, French, Spanish, they all sound like they're mumbling to me when they talk. But
mm,
like German, it's like they're enunciating their
yeah.
vowels and stuff. So I'm always just like those languages that are like they flow together. They're meant to flow together. You're like, I don't know what the frick you're saying. I have no idea what you're saying. That's why I have a really hard time. I can read French pretty well, and if somebody's slowly speaking it, I can understand it decently. But like if somebody's talking fast, I'm no idea. Even like I teach in lots
Mm.
of French schools, and if the kids just start talking French at me, like asking me something, I'm like, whoa, slow down. I don't know what you just said, because I can't understand. It's too one word to me. It sounds like one word.
Yeah, it's so like the French words melange together
Yeah.
anyway. So if you have a consonant on the end, usually you don't pronounce it unless the next word begins with a vowel, and then you like softly push it to the next word, and you're like, so some words, so I could say je suis Fred, like je suis, and it ends with an S. But if I was to say I'm here, je suis ici, like you like. So that's just a small example, but like yeah, this anyway, and also just mumbling, like it's such a mumbly language, and yeah. So,
Oh.
but your question was, is it the French I'm struggling with?
Yeah.
Well, good question, right? Because yes, massively, I'm struggling with the French enormously. But you know what else I'm struggling with is just being on, like switched on for hours and hours and hours, in a place that I'm not like that comfortable with, and I know, and I hate using like disability as an excuse, but everyone is like, oh, we'll get up and walk around and stuff, and I'm
Yeah.
just sat in the wheelchair, and I know that like I'm sat down all day, but it really hurts your body to be sat down all day when you can't
I
just get up
know.
and stretch. So, and you're sat down, you're dealing cards, and like I've just been, it's been taxing, like mentally taxing and physically taxing. I hadn't anticipated how much, like in my sort of laissez-faire lifestyle, that like if I want to lay down, I'll just go and lay down. And like, yeah, I'm a bit tired. My body's telling me to lay down. But when you can't lay down, you're like, oh shit, like my body is really telling me to lay down, and I've just got to keep dealing these cards. And that's something that I hadn't anticipated, but it's like physically taxing. You wouldn't think that like being a croupier is physically taxing, but some things are physically taxing on a disabled body.
Yeah. I think one of the things that like immediately when I thought about it, like shuffling cards and dealing cards, like, and I know that you're paralyzed lower than I am, but you still have a center of gravity that you're pivoting on all day long. And when you're moving your arms and stuff like that, you have to balance with whatever core you have left. And
Mm.
for me, I don't really have much core, so it's always my neck. So like if I'm
Mm.
using my hands all day, my neck gets so sore. And like you say, if you can't lay down or like stretch out or do something and you're just forced to do that, that's why I have a substitute teaching job, because if I'm like I work 4 days in a row and I'm like I no, I'm not working Friday. But yeah, people that work every day, they don't have a choice.
Marco, you're so right. Working full time ain't all it cracks up to be, Fred. I fully agree with you. The thing is, like, when I look at Chris, and like how I've been saying like recently about, oh, I would love to like contribute more. I'd love to have like a full time job, and like it'd be great to be trained up and have a skill set and stuff. When you're like working full time, yeah. Chris looks at me and like, mate, you're like just chilling at home all day, like your life's great, and I'm like, oh, but it's not that fulfilling. And then when you're, and it sounds such a cop out, right? But it is tax like, and I again, I've said this before. I hate using my disability as an excuse. I'm like, I can do anything that these guys can do, and I'm like, apart from when I want to lay down, I want to lay down.
Oh, that's so funny. I know I don't like using it as an excuse either, but it's a reality. And not that I think pain or discomfort is an excuse not to work. I do think that it is something that, like, if you have some sort of comfort level that doesn't motivate you to become, more painful during the day, why would you, kind of thing. It's a really hard balance to like strike, right? But there's plenty of people who work all day long, probably that are able-bodied, that have lots of back pain or whatever, people that work on their feet. And I do think that there's a level of endurance that you obtain after you work full time for a
Yeah.
certain length of time. So maybe it's like, we don't work full time enough to get that endurance, build up that endurance, but it's hard. It is really hard.
Mm.
Even just like managing your time properly so that it doesn't feel like you're like, blah. Like that's what it always feels like to me. Like when I work too much, I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. It's all going by so fast. I still have supper to cook and dishes to do and people
Mm.
to drive places. And it always just feels like very stressful.
Yeah, yeah. I've got a couple of videos which I can share that will give you an idea of what I've been doing. So there's this one. So this is what they call fait the salade. Like so it's called a casino wash. So where you wash the cards, but in French it's the salad. So
Yeah.
like you je fais la salade, and then you've got a shuffle like this. So you shuffle once, then you cut, then you shuffle once more, and then you do like 4 cuts, like you strip cut, and then you shuffle once more, and then you put a cut card down, and then you do a one-handed cut, and that's it. And now you're ready to deal. So that's pretty much it. I mean, I can. Yeah, they were teaching me how to do the slide deal, whatever. And then this is what the room looked like. So there's just lots of poker tables, and that was it really. So hold on, if I just go back, yeah, you see like there's there's the other trainees, and there's lots of poker tables, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, I mean that's the room I've been spending like lots of hours in, and it's not that, like, again, it doesn't look that taxing. Like you're like, what are you complaining about? You're just bloody shuffling cards. But I had a moment earlier where, so I guess the more advanced people like were doing that at that table, and I was just on
Yeah.
that table on my own, and he was just like, it's all right, just practice shuffling, and I was like, okay. And then he got me to put the deck in like new deck order, because, but bizarrely enough, I didn't know this, but the croupiers have to put the deck in new deck order at the end of a shift. So when the new croupiers come, they can spread the cards and see that all the cards are present. So like there's
Ah.
no cards missing, right? So he was like, okay, put the cards in new deck order. I was like, okay. we must be finishing soon or something. Maybe we're knocking off early. And then he's like, okay, shuffle again. And I was like, oh, for God's sake. And it made me feel like, like the guy that gets punished by like, he has to push a rock up a hill and then it falls down the hill. And then he has to push it up the hill again. And I was like, oh, I feel like this is me. I'm just shuffling the cards over and over again. And I was like, this is kind of boring. Like I learn more when we're dealing in like a dealing situation, because guess what? Every time we deal, I shuffle the cards, and he's like, no, I think your shuffling needs a little bit more practice. And I was like, okay, I was shuffling there for like an hour, and I was like, mate, I've got such a banging headache. I felt physically sick. I just went through this like horrible stage of just like I actually might throw up, and it wasn't necessarily the shuffling. It was because my brain was like so like kind of wired and switched on, but I wasn't necessarily mentally stimulated. I wasn't like stimulated by like shuffling practice, for an hour. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I got the shuffle. Like I know that I'm not shuffling as quick as you, but like there's more things that I need to learn about the
Yeah.
game than. So yeah, that was like really, really, really tough. And I know it sounds like, but it did feel like a mild form of torture. I was just like, oh, fucking hell. Just
Yeah.
shuffle the cards. Like, yeah.
I thought that was interesting. I don't know, for some reason I thought you would be learning like fancy shuffling things where
Mm,
like it's almost like artful, you know what I mean? But it's just like plain shuffling. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I don't know why I would, but
So
yeah.
you bring up a good point. So there was a guy, because shuffling like that, they make you shuffle like that so you can't see any of the cards. So you're shuffling completely blind. So you can't see you can't even like, if you flick the cards up, you can see the pips. And, if you're some sort of card magician, guilty, you might be able to, cheat in some way.
Yeah.
So normally when I shuffle, I do like a bit of a flourish. And this one
Yeah.
guy who was teaching me to shuffle, it was interesting. Like he was like, "Oh, how did you do that?" And he couldn't do the shuffle that I was doing, and that's the shuffle I always
Like
do.
the bridge thing?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's what I do
yeah.
too. Yeah. I'm like, you don't get to do the like bridge thing? I'm like,
No, no.
I spent like hours as a kid learning that.
So one of the guys who was really, really good at shuffling couldn't do that, and I was like, "Oh, that's so interesting." And he was like, "Oh, some people that are like really good at cards can shuffle without the table." And I was like, "What, you mean like this?" And he was like, "Oh, you can shuffle without the table." I was like,
Yeah.
"Man, for someone who is such a good like poker shuffler, you can't even do that." And I was like, "Oh man!" So there's like the skill. I had to learn a new shuffle basically, which I wasn't
Yeah.
prepared for. So all the time I spent practicing French, I should have been practicing my shuffling and like poker and like, yeah. There's so much about poker that I guess dealing poker that I didn't know, and I was focused so much on the French that I kind of like didn't research that. And so yeah, it anyway, yeah, it's been taxing.
I think that's interesting. The things that we focus on that end up being nothing at all. It's like when you study for a test and you focus so hard on this one area and there's like no questions on the test in that area, and you're
Mm,
like I spent so much time like worrying about that area and I didn't even have to, right? And then
mm.
you ultimately fail on one area because you didn't focus on that. But I wanted to chat about like the competitiveness of the job market just in general with disability. And I thought this would be a good like, reason to bring it up because is the job market overly competitive to begin with, and do people with disabilities have a chance in that competitive market, and is there a way that we can like frame our disability to give us an edge in a positive way, or not, or is it really just about the job and that it has to be a wheelchair accessible and the wheelchair, like once the wheelchair is eliminated, or is it more about like our personality and what we bring to the table? I don't know. I don't really know what the answer is to that. So I wanted to ask you sort of all of those questions. Like, do you feel like you are at a competitive disadvantage in this scenario?
It's a good question. There are a little, there are little things that make the make it a little bit less friendly. Like for
Yeah.
example, for some reason they put these like big barriers in front of like the like where you go to get the lift. So everyone else goes down the stairs, and there's a big grand. So it's like in an old castle, if you know what I mean. Very high ceilings. I didn't get much footage of the actual casino, but so everyone else goes down the stairs, but I've got to go down the lift, and like for some reason the casino staff keep putting these big things in the way, so I have to like keep pulling them away to like get in the lift and go down. So it's kind of like okay, and those sort of things make you feel like a little bit less welcome. So for
Yeah.
example, the trainer, he was like, "Oh, some casinos that you go to, there aren't lifts." So I was like, "Oh, okay, so that means some jobs won't be available to me." And I guess that's not necessarily to do with poker, but that's just to do with the fact that some buildings are old and some casinos are old, and they're not really built with people with disabilities in mind. And it's interesting how they cater for people with disabilities if they're spending money, but
Yeah.
like not so much if they're employed.
That's one thing that I think is like one of the things that I recommend to people is like if you are going to pick a job market to enter into, try and find places that people with disabilities or seniors naturally go, and
Mm,
anybody that like that there's a natural like requirement for accessibility. So like in the education space, children have disabilities and they have to educate children with disabilities.
hmm
So most of the time, unless they're old buildings, I mean, when I was in university and I taught summer camp and stuff like that, and I had to go do workshops at different schools that are inner city, those were terrible. Those were really hit and miss for accessibility because they were really old buildings. But now pretty much everything has to be accessible. So I've found in the education space that like it's a given. So
mm,
I love being in that job market because I really feel like my disability is an asset because I am part of a minority that they want to represent so that kids can see, themselves in their teachers, right? So I think that
mm.
it's an asset in a lot of ways. And I don't think that there are schools that are not accessible that I've experienced in my school division or anything. So yeah, I think those, yeah, looking in job markets that are naturally accessible are great things. But really there's a handful. If I had to like pick ones that are naturally accessible, it's a handful. And even places that are accessible like hospitals and stuff, that job market is not very easy to enter into in terms of healthcare unless you're doing something that's like office administration or something. So there's some places, even though they are accessible, the job market that you want to enter into is challenging anyway. So yeah, it's really hard. Do you think that you in an interview situation would you mention your disability and try and sell it as an asset, or would you just never mind it? Like, would you just not mention it?
I mean, that's a good question. They did fill out a form. They got me to fill out a form saying, "Do you have any concerns?" And I was like, "Well, my main concern is like my French, but another concern is that I hope that my disability is considered when doing it because like when I looked at some of the poker online, I'm like, those croupiers are definitely standing up, and the table looks really high. And when we went into the casino on the first night, I've got a funny story for you about that as well. But when we went into the casino, you can play a game called Ultimate Texas Hold'em Poker, which is a little bit
Oh,
different. It's like you instead of playing poker against each other, you play against the casino. It's a bit weird, but the table was very high. The croupiers were standing, and all the like I couldn't play it because they're on like the high stools, and I was like, oh, okay. I guess I can't play that. And the blackjack was the same. I was like, well, I guess I can't play blackjack. And I'm like, that's interesting because what if I wanted to play blackjack? What if I was a high roller? I couldn't, I couldn't.
yeah.
So we ended up dabbling with a bit of roulette. But yeah, that was it. I forgot your original question now. Sorry.
It was if you were into like if you were to go to a job interview for this specific
Ah,
job, would you mention your disability as like
hmm.
an asset, or would you just not mention the disability unless they asked about it? Like unless they brought it up, would you bring it up first to be like, and here's why being in a wheelchair is going to be great for your organization, or would you just never mind it?
Um, that's a good question. I think it's a little bit disingenuous if you don't mention you're in a wheelchair. So I guess the best thing is like for you is to mention it in a positive light. But for this one, I was just a little bit honest and say, look, just I should probably mention that I'm in a wheelchair. Like I'm pretty sure I could do the job, but just in case it's that one, just in case it was like a blackjack dealer instead of a poker dealer, they're like, well, you can't because the table's really high. And
Yeah.
that's rather than me turning up there and they'll be like, oh, you never mentioned you're in a wheelchair. And I'd be like, well, I didn't think it was going to be a problem, And then it's a
Yeah.
waste of everyone's time. So, yeah, I'm not sure if I even answered your question, but I think I know where you're coming from. Like, you should be like, yeah, if it's a different job, you'd be like, this is what I'm going to bring to your company. Like, for example, I'm living with a disability makes me really good at problem solving and thinking from a different perspective, and I could bring that to your company, um, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant. Cause I was just thinking if I went into a job interview, like as a teacher, being in a wheelchair doesn't really prohibit me from doing the job. There are certain things that we might have to make, considerations about, like in terms of field trips, if there was like a bus that needed to have a lift in it or something. So there would be like accommodations here and there that they would have to make, but like me being in a wheelchair doesn't really affect the job. So I'm always wondering, like, if I went into a job interview, if I applied for the job, on paper I didn't say I was in a wheelchair, I went in, wheeled in, I did the job interview, they didn't ask about my wheelchair, I didn't mention the wheelchair, would I mention the wheelchair? Would I be like, and just in case, like, I don't know, I never really know whether that's like an appropriate thing to be like, I'm very resourceful, I've gone through many challenges in my life, I can like, because for me a lot of being in a wheelchair is being able to relate to kids about having tough things and being like, so what, you just have to deal with it, and having a very visible like struggle that kids can see and relate to in an easy tangible way. So I love that. And if I didn't mention that, I think I would be doing a disservice to myself to be
mm,
able to say why I would be such a great teacher. But also, if I mentioned it, would they be like, oh, she's like pulling the wheelchair card? Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Like, I'm always like very confused about that because I don't think that it's important in a lot of ways, but I also do think it's important in some ways. And I just don't ever know whether I love selling it as an asset. I really do. I just would never want anybody to be like, okay, here it comes. Why is her
yeah,
wheelchair good? You know what I mean? Like the positive thing when you spin something positive and they're
yeah, yeah.
expecting it, like, oh, what's she gonna say about her wheelchair? And then when I say something, um, they'll be like, oh, okay, whatever. I don't know.
I mean, you make a good point. I was when I applied for the training, I was like, do I mention that I'm in a wheelchair? Like, I actually asked ChatGPT. I was like, I'm pretty sure you can do the job from a wheelchair, but it's polite to let them know, right, rather than just spring it on them. Like, just I'm sure your casino is wheelchair accessible, but just out of you
Yes.
know, I thought I'd mention I use a wheelchair. It won't affect how I could do the job, but I just thought I'd mention it, which I think is what I went for in the original email. But I didn't frame it as like this is I'm going to be the best croupier because
No.
yeah, because but I know, but like a teacher's different. A teacher, you can bring way more to the table. Be like, I have a completely different perspective on life, which I think I can share with the children, and it will make them grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
No, I totally get it. And I wouldn't ever mention it. I wouldn't ever mention it unless I was in an active face-to-face job interview that I was invited to. I wouldn't ever like start selling my wheelchair as an asset. I would always, and I've done this before in job interviews, I've called ahead and I've been like, "Hey, I have a job interview scheduled for this day with this supervisor. I just want to, make sure that the facility is wheelchair accessible because I am in a wheelchair." And so I let them know so that they can be like, "Oh, it's completely wheelchair accessible and here's the parking stall or whatever."
Mm,
And sometimes they've been like, oh, it's not, so just give me a minute and I will see if we can change the location or whatever, which has happened before and they've done it
that's
in a
nice.
conference room somewhere else. So those kinds of things I think are important. I just know that, like, in my experience, like for example, when I was at doing my teaching practicum, I had to meet with a facilitator that was basically like, the liaison between the university and the school, and it was her job to sort of make sure that I was going to be a good teacher, and she had to sign off on the things. And every single time I had my interview with her, I whined about my wheelchair. Here's why the school isn't set up for me, here's where the public resources for teaching are too high. I asked, nobody's offering to help me with these things, I can't do this, I can't do that. And at the end of it all, she was like, so you made it sound like you are going to be a really terrible teacher because you have a disability, and you made every excuse in the book why your disability is a liability to the school. So just so you know, that is a not a good thing. So you should, and I took it as an insult when she did that. I was just like, you don't
Yeah,
understand my life. Like, it was terrible. And then when I was like later on, became a teacher, I went back and I read my own report of my experience in my teaching practicum. And I was like, I would never have hired me, not in 1,000,000 years, because I was
Mm,
like, here's why it's hard, here's how it's going to be difficult, here's all the things. And so I think many people go into situations like that expecting, or not even like expecting, but they are explaining accommodations, but they're explaining the accommodations that they require in a way that sounds negative. And I think
mm,
that it's called positioning, and this is like a marketing thing, super age old. So you can position something in a great way, or you can position something in a bad way. It's no different than glass half full, glass half empty. It's the same friggin' glass, it's the same friggin' liquid, but somebody's like, shit, I got a glass that's that's half full. How lucky is that? And somebody else is coming up and like, oh, my glass is half empty. It's positioning. So I think disability is very important like that. So in a job interview setting, I think that you have to come into it like that. I just don't know always how to artfully do that, because you don't ever want it to be a card. And
mm,
especially right now when we have cards everywhere, we have gender orientate, or like sexual orientation, gender, we have disability, we have feminism, we have race, we have like all these cards that are fighting over each other, for the loudest voice, I think, right now. And I think that I don't want to show up as somebody that like uses my card in a disingenuous way. I always want it to be very genuine.
mm.
Here's my life experience. Here's where it's going to be an asset to you, your company, all of that stuff. And, you should hire me because of that, and all of the other things that I bring to the table. But I don't want it to be like, here's my card and you should hire
Mm.
me because it might be a human rights issue. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
people that
yeah,
use their cards like that. So I don't want it ever to be like that. But yeah, I just was curious about what your opinion was on that, because it's never black and
mm,
white. Like, you don't, in this situation, you might use your disability as an asset. In these other situations, you might minimize it, because it might not
yeah.
be an asset.
So there was a moment today where, again, like where I was just that moment where I was like, I genuinely felt sick. I think it was like a banana milkshake. I had this banana milkshake that Chris bought me, and I was like, I drank it, and I was like,
Oh,
oh
I
god, that
hate
must have made me feel a
banana.
bit sick. So then I had some water, and I think I drank. Yeah, I know it's gonna sound weird, but I drank too much water. Anyway, there's a moment I was like, I think I might be sick, and then I was like, oh, my back hurts. Oh, I think my head's gonna explode. And then I was like, oh, my body hurts. Oh, I want to lay down. Oh my god, I just want to tap out. And I was like, I can't say, oh, listen, guys, I know that, everyone else's seems fine, but like I've got a disability and I just need to
Yeah,
just go and lay down for 5 minutes. Do you have somewhere I could just go lay down for like 10 minutes? Because I'm like, oh, they're gonna be like, well, you can't do the job, man.
yeah.
Like, you're a croupier. What if like you're in the middle of a tournament, and you want to go lay down? Like, so I was like, fuck, I have to pretend I'm all right when I'm not all right. Like, I'm not all right now, but I have to pretend I'm all right because I want to get the job. So, but and at the same time, I wasn't really overreacting. I genuinely felt sick. But it was tied to my disability. My body was
Yeah.
aching, and my body was saying, we need to just take a break right now. And I didn't. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
don't want my disability to be a negative, but I do want to be honest.
I think that I know, and that is the hardest part. That right there, you hit the nail on the head, because you never want to lie or hide something that you is a genuine accommodation that you require. That you don't want to get sick, you don't want to like get hurt. You need certain things in order for your performance to be adequate, but you never want to like, I don't know, it's just it's a really hard thing. I think that you have to kind of like fake it till you make it. And then once you prove your worth, then people will almost do anything to bend over backwards for you,
Mm,
because they don't mind accommodating somebody who tries hard. But if like you're like second day in and you need that accommodation and you're like, I need this accommodation, and you don't kind of be like, okay, I should probably like try my best not to require this accommodation. Obviously, if it's like we were talking about like certain things, I need a wheelchair accessible bathroom. I'm not going to go to a
yeah,
school and be like, you know what, I don't have to pee all day so that I look really
yeah,
great.
yeah,
There's certain accommodations that obviously you need. That's the first thing I do. Show me your bathroom where I can go to the bathroom. But other things, not. If I pee my pants during the day, do you know what I do when I'm at school teaching? I sit in my pee, which sounds gross,
mm,
or
mm,
I like have an incontinence pad that I change. But if I don't have enough then I just sit in my pee. And that sounds gross, but I'm not going to be like, you know what? I got to go. I peed my
Mm.
pants and, I'm a little bit wet and it's uncomfortable. So I'm just like, I just sit in it and I go home and I change my pants at the end of the day. And it's really frustrating, but I will not push that accommodation and be like, I have to go because I peed my pants, because that will happen all the time. And if you
Yeah.
did that all the time, they would be like, oh, okay, this lady pees her pants like 4 times a week and she has to go 4 times a week. Nobody's going to tolerate that. But they will tolerate me going to the bathroom 6 times a day and,
Yeah, yeah.
having little things that I do with my grade ones. If I'm in there, I'm like, okay, I need a classroom monitor and this person's in charge. And, I do all these things in order for me to be able to leave the room and leave a 25, 6-year-olds in there by themselves. And the
Mm.
administration never says anything to me about that. Cause they're like, you know what, you got to pee, go to the bathroom as many times as you need, as long as you're making sure the classroom is safe. So yeah, those accommodations are fine, but they're not going to let me
Yeah.
leave all the time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
You make a really, really good point, because I was thinking about like when you're dealing like in the middle of a game. I'm lucky, like when I need a wee, I get the tingle and I can hold it in. Well, you've seen me hold it in for like
Yeah,
40 minutes when we're doing a
totally.
podcast, right? Sometimes.
Wiggle.
And sometimes I dribble a little bit, just, but when you got
Yeah.
to go, you got to go, right? Most people can hold it in. So if I'm
Yeah.
like, I need to go to the toilet, I can imagine someone being like, well, can't you just hold it? And then me having that awkward conversation, especially in a second language, where being like,
No, I
actually, I
can't.
can't,
Mhm.
because it's to do with my injury and my disability, and I'm probably going to pee my pants if I don't. I've got like a 2 minute warning and I need to go to the toilet, and if it's in the middle of a hand, I might wee myself. And luckily, I don't, like, I can hold it a
Yeah.
bit, probably enough. But there are people out there that would be a genuine concern for. You'd be like,
Yeah.
shit, this guy's taking ages to decide if he's going to like fold or call, and I'm going to piss my pants.
Yeah. That's like such a good segue to the thing that I wanted to bring up too, which was what is a good enough excuse to not work? Do you know what I mean? Like, are there
Mm,
things that are just too inconvenient, embarrassing, like whatever, that make it so hard to work? Because I recently was on, it was a town hall, like meeting thing with the government, because they're changing our disability income supports here in Alberta, and the program is terrible that they're changing it to. But there's a lot of people on there on this town hall that were talking about the reasons that they couldn't work. I can't work because I have debilitating nerve pain in my feet when I walk. I can't work because of this, or I can't work because of that, because I have depression or mental health issues or whatever it is. And I'm always like, what is the thing that makes it so hard and so inconvenient that you couldn't leave the house? And I'm just fully upfront here. I was being so judgmental of a lot of the people because I have nerve pain all the time, all day long. I don't walk on my feet because it's just friggin' in my head and
mm,
it's phantom pain. But I'm like, that would never be an excuse not to work for me, because I have nerve pain all of the time. And if I use that as an excuse not to do anything, then I would not do anything. Like, half the time I feel
mm,
like I'm being electrocuted and my feet are being burned
mm,
off and all that stuff. So I'm just like, what makes it okay not to work in certain situations, or what makes it too hard? Because there's some people who are constantly incontinent. Is that a
mm.
reason not to work? You know what I mean? Or do you wear a diaper? Like, what are the things? And I'm totally being transparent. I don't know, because everybody has their
Yeah,
own, level. I was just curious if we could have a little bit of a conversation about that, in terms of like,
yeah.
what's your worst thing that would make working totally not doable?
Well, you make a really good point. Like the nerve pain is a genuine consideration. Like what you like, I know that you say you have nerve pain and you do stuff, but like there's a scale, and like
Yeah.
I, I don't have nerve pain, which I'm very grateful for. Like my nerve pain is like a 2 out of 10, but some people's are like a 9 out of 10 all the time. So that must be horrible, right? For
Yeah.
me, one of the things I've been very, very, very grateful for so far this week is that my spasms have been very, very calm. And I'm like, number one, it's nice not to just, especially when you're in a group of people, especially like young lads, like they're all like young lads, and your legs start like flicking around, like you get a lot of unwanted attention. Like
Hmm.
again, not a lot of people are aware of spasticity, and they're like, oh, I thought he was paralyzed. He just kicked the air, and obviously sometimes when my spasms are bad, I am I literally look like I'm in excruciating pain and I'm trying to hide it, like ooh, ooh, and I've been so grateful that my spasms have been calm, like during the
Yeah.
first 2 days of training. But what if I'm in the middle of dealing, a tournament, and I'm ooh, ooh, and I look just I'm like I'm putting people off the game probably. They're like, I'm supposed to be like the silent professional, that
Yeah.
I mean, it's not enough to not work, but like it's a consideration to be aware of,
Yeah.
and how do you bring that up with the employer? Oh, by the way, sometimes, my spasms are really bad, and they're like, spasms? I'm like, yeah, it's when my legs involuntarily kick out, and yeah, that might affect my work. And they're like, oh, okay. And then you've got to, like, going back to your question earlier,
Yeah.
like, well, who do I employ? Do I employ the guy who can, hold his bladder and, not, put people off in the game, or this
Yeah.
wheelchair guy who has to have like an elevator and, all these other considerations.
Yeah.
And going back to when I applied for that job last winter, their office was up a spiral staircase, and we had to do the interview in an
Yeah.
office downstairs.
Yeah.
And then when I said, how am I going to get to the office if I do get the job? They're like, oh, well, if you're the right candidate, we'll work it out. And I was like, well, that's a really lovely positive thing to say, but it's a spiral staircase. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and then in the end,
Mhm.
they were like, yeah, we're gonna go another direction. And I was like, yeah, I get it. They were like, well, we're looking for someone who's more fluent in French. Perfect. That's a great excuse. But who knows? You know what I mean? Like, there
Totally.
could be like
I
also a guy that, can just walk up the stairs to the office. Like,
Yeah. It is a really hard thing because as like think if I were putting myself in an employer's shoes, you're a company, you are, trying to worry about profits and other people's pay, like making sure everybody else gets paid and your company is like successful and you want it to be as efficient as possible and all that stuff. So when you look at somebody with a disability and you think, on one hand, this person I have to accommodate, even if they could be like the most amazing talented person at that job, and then this other person who's maybe a little less talented but no accommodations, all that stuff. But the thing that I know from like Joe working at his job and hiring people and all that stuff is that it does not matter whether the person is able-bodied, what race they are, what gender they are, what anything. People need accommodations all the time that you can't predict. You
yeah,
cannot predict. Somebody's mom dies and they have to go, back to their home country, or somebody's this or that, or whatever it is. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter what is happening. People need accommodations. And it's just ours is very visible, so they get to make that prejudgment, whereas other people, you can't see mental health issues, or they can't see Crohn's
mm,
disease or other sicknesses that might need accommodations that are also at least in Canada protected under the disability, like the disability whatever the taxes thing is that you have to fill out in order to get the tax breaks to have a disability here, or for having a disability, like Crohn's disease. All these invisible things are still protected under that. So you can't see all those things, and you can see
mm,
ours. So yeah, I think that it's an interesting thing to think about. And I think a lot of the time, in the studies that I've read at least, where they talk about like hiring practices and stuff, people are almost always hired likely on skill, because you have to get an interview, you have to get your resume past the like management team or whatever to get an
mm,
interview. But once you're past that, then it's most of the time just on feeling, from like what the person likes about the person. And that goes a long way. So if you can show up to an interview with presence, with enthusiasm, and you have a personality, that goes a long way. Like I've obviously not gotten jobs before, and that's okay. But like the jobs that I have gotten, most of the time it hasn't been because of my skill, it's been because of
mm.
my personality. So I'm gonna tell you that I'm the least skilled person in almost everything. So if I didn't
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
personality, my jobs prospects would suck. um
Have you ever not got a job because of your disability?
I don't think so. I think it's the exact opposite. I think I've gotten jobs because of my disability. So, like my summer job that I worked at in university, I think I got because of my disability. So, I went to the job interview, I got the job. And then afterwards, when I was talking to all of these other people that were university students with engineering, like in engineering fields and stuff like that, they all had to go through one interview, two interviews, group interviews. They had to do all this stuff. And I was like, I just had one interview. I'm like, what? That's weird. And so I truly believe, and not that I think this is great. I'm not a huge fan of like the, hiring because of your disability or
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
diversity hire or whatever. But I'm really glad I got that job because I learned so much. And it was awesome. And funnily enough, Jacob, this is just like a side story. Jacob's teacher sent home like a thing, his psychology teacher, he's in grade 12, and the name of the teacher, I was like, I 100% worked with that girl in this summer camp that I worked at in university, just called Discover E. And I was like, there is not that many Timorys around because her name was
Yeah, yeah.
Timory. And so I like emailed, I was like, did you work at this place? And she was like, I absolutely did. Why? What's the connection? And I was like, I totally worked with you. And I was like, my maiden name was this. And she was like, oh yeah, we worked together. And it was really funny. So Jacob, his teacher ended up being this year, just happened to be one of the people that I worked with at that summer camp that I think I got because of my disability. But yeah, and then every other job that I've gotten, honestly, it's because I've met somebody, I've made a relationship with them. They're like, you should apply for this job. And then I've applied for it. I've pretty much had the job before I've gotten it. Like I
Oh,
sat by
nice.
getting the job that I currently have at the school division. I was at my daughter's recital in school and I sat beside the superintendent of the school division, who's like the big boss of the entire school division. And I was just like, I'm very talkative. So I was chatting with him and he was like, I don't know how we got on, talking about it, but I said I had a teaching degree. He's like, you have a teaching degree? Wait, what? And so he was like, you are definitely applying to be a substitute teacher. And I was like,
Oh,
sure.
amazing.
So then I
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
And yeah, so I think it's always about my personality rather than any of my skill sets, because when I first became like when I first started teaching, horrible. Now I'm
Oh,
great.
really? Yeah, yeah.
Now I'm great. Oh,
Well, networking goes a long way, especially if
yeah.
you've got a charming personality. Um, I think in France you get, I think maybe it could be elsewhere as well, but if you employ someone with a disability, you get like a tax break. The company gets in, there's some sort
Oh,
of incentive, like financial incentive to employ someone with a disability. I'm almost sure of it. I might have to ask ChatGPT. Maybe you could fact check me, but I'm almost certain of it
that's
because
great.
when I worked for Skidi, that's what they were like. They were like, oh yeah, we'll definitely give you a job. And I think someone mentioned that. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
I do think that's pretty cool. I think it's nice to incentivize employers because there's a lot of stigmas out there about disability, and people can't get past that a lot of the time. Like you
Mm.
can't, unless the person knows somebody with a disability and has a history with them, then they're, even Joe, like I'm his wife, and obviously he works in a factory, so there's not a lot of people in wheelchairs or something being employed there, but like it's something that he would have to think about, in terms of accommodations, because he would have to make those accommodations and they would cost money and all of that stuff. So it's something that he thinks about as a boss, and his wife is in a wheelchair. So if somebody doesn't have any experience with a disability, then their immediate thing is going to be, oh, they're going to be a drain. You know what I mean? They're going to
Mm.
take more time off. They're going to be sick more often. They're going to cost me more money, and their productivity is going to be lower, which might all be true in a lot of cases.
Mm.
But still, I do think that people deserve meaningful work. And I do think that we add value to the workplace, even if we do require accommodations. That's why I think your personality has to, you know, don't have a shitty personality.
Yeah, I was going to highlight this comment real quick from Colleen. She said, I retired after 38 years. I'm a wheelchair user due to CP. I'm guessing that's cerebral palsy. I developed bladder bowel issues and daily chronic pain. I was requiring more accommodations they didn't want to provide. I was 53. Yeah, so that's kind of
Oh,
like that does suck, but it's like I can kind of
yeah.
almost see it from the employer's point of view as well. Like,
Yeah.
oh, this lady's becoming more and more of a ball ache. But like I do really feel for you as well, Colleen. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a weird thing. Like you can put yourself in other shoes, and like I kind of like I don't ever think any that should happen to anyone. You know what I mean? It's a bummer. You know what I mean? Like to be like, oh, so now I'm out of the workforce. Like I can't contribute anymore. But at the same time, as an employer, you've got to like, I don't know, yeah, if you want more and more accommodations, it's kind of more and more of a ball ache for them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to offend you, Colleen, but it's kind of it sucks for just disability sucks sometimes. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
It really does. I just wanted to highlight this comment too because we were talking about the high tables in some of the casinos, and a lower table is a reasonable accommodation. I love this comment because there are so many reasonable accommodations that don't change the workplace whatsoever. They might cost money, but they're not going to change the way the workplace functions in any way. Having a lower table for blackjack is not going to change the way the game is played. It's not going to change the amount of people that can sit at the table. It is not going to change the workplace whatsoever. And if I can just like have like a little soapbox here, stop, and I'm gonna like swear, stop fucking putting high tables in places because they don't make any sense for
Yeah,
anybody. Nobody wants to sit at
yeah,
high tables. And even high counters. I went to the mall yesterday to get my van fixed because something broke on it. And it's literally a brand new dealership. And all of the service like tables are extremely high. I'm like, why? Those,
yeah,
and I think it's ergonomics. People are supposed to stand at the workplace now, so that's why they do it. They do it so that people are standing and not sitting all day long when they're working because it's not good for you. But I don't get why they can't make low tables in some of
yeah.
the spots. Like it just doesn't make any sense. So anyway, that's my soapbox. That accommodation would not change at all how a casino functions. So please make reasonable accommodations because they're good for everybody.
It, I couldn't agree with you more. I
Yeah,
hate those high tables,
I
whether you
hate
go to a
them.
bar, a hotel,
Oh,
like as a magician, like, I've said this to you before, or maybe I didn't, but it's worth saying again. But, yeah, I go around the hotel and I'm like, oh, who can I show a magic trick to? And I'm like, these guys, well, not
yeah,
those guys, because they're, I'm like, oh, hey guys, like,
exactly.
I'm just sat there and they're all at the stools and they suck. Like,
Yeah.
what's the point? Like, yeah, I hate that. So I can't do magic to those guys, and also I can't play blackjack or I can't play ultimate Texas Hold'em
Yeah.
poker. So yeah, that's like just counted me out, and I was so gutted. Not that I particularly wanted to. But going back to the casino, I do have like a fairly funny anecdote. But I was watching people play. Anyway, we were like, well, we'll get $20 and we'll play a bit of roulette just because we're in the casino. And Chris had never been in a casino before.
What?
Anyway, we were playing roulette and we were watching some very degenerate gamblers. One of them was just like a really young lad. He looked like barely 18. I was like, man,
Yeah.
like I can't believe you're exposed to this so young. Like your brain's so
Mhm.
malleable. And we were just like betting €1 like on the black and the red, and we're like, hey, we won €1. Oh, we lost the euro. you know? And these guys come up, right? They were dressed in like one of these guys had like a very fancy suit, designer clothes, just dripping with like fancy, like almost vulgar displays of wealth, like big gold watches, gold chains,
Yeah.
and just like, and one of the guy had like this Louis Vuitton like handbag, like a man bag, and it didn't even have a handle. And he just put it on the
Like a
table.
like a clutch, like a woman carrying a clutch. Oh my,
Exactly like, yeah, like a
weird.
that. And I was like, immediately I just thought, are these guys gay? Like they don't give like a camp vibe, but he's definitely got a handbag. Like I don't even know what's in that handbag, but it was,
Oh,
like people that just like they just scream I'm wealthy, and then you're in the
yeah.
casino, right, and they've got like the €500 chips, and I'm like, oh
Oh.
my god, like we're betting €1, and I was like, and also then he's speaking English to me because he's loving that, like he can shout loud in English because he's like, oh, you're English, and he's kind of like almost showing off that he's bilingual, and I was like, what are those chips? Like, sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but I just can't see like the denomination. He's like 500, and I was like, oh, that's a lot of money. I was like, that's what I paid for the hotel for the week. I was like, that's not exactly life changing money, but like that's wild that you're like rinsing almost 10 grand like on the roulette table. And when you're at the roulette table, it's obvious if you stay there long enough that the person who is winning every time is the casino.
Yeah.
They just like, I don't know if you've seen it, but like, yeah, basically they bet, and I have no idea like why they do it, but they bet like on everything. Like there's so many people like putting chips everywhere, and then at the end, 90% of the chips go in like this little thing, and then like they give out a few back, and I'm like, my God, like are you guys mental? Like why are you even here? Like you're just like I look at me, I've literally got too much money.
That I don't understand. I don't understand gambling at all, really.
Yeah.
So people that are poor who gamble in the chance that they might win money don't make any sense to me because I'm like, chances are you're going to lose it and be more poor. And then people who
Mm.
already have money, like I read that Bruno Mars had to be doing his like thing at MGM because he was $5 million in debt to the casino, and so he had to
Wow.
keep his residency there, so he had to keep performing for years without even getting paid because he just kept playing the casino. And I'm like, Bruno Mars, you're a rich guy, like why are you gambling? You don't need to win anything. And I'm like, if you want to
Yeah.
play poker, go play those like moneyless fake money games. I'm like, if you like the challenge of it, like, well, I don't get it. I'm like,
Mm.
I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. Gambling, the challenge of gambling doesn't make sense to me. I buy a lottery ticket here and there, but I never buy it like, as my like retirement savings plan. You
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? And there are people that go to the casino and be like, oh, I just don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, never, never, never.
So the gambling's about the thrill of like winning. Like I've been there before. I went to I lived I did a season in Lake Tahoe, like a ski season, and I lived on State Line Avenue. So like it was the border between California and Nevada, and on the state line was like big five massive casinos, and the casinos over there are like way better than the casinos here.
Yeah.
When you're gambling, they give you drinks for free, and it's like
Yeah.
alive, it's like a
Yeah.
so, and we were playing craps, and like craps is where you bet on the rolling of the dice.
Yeah.
So anyway, I won't go into detail. You just bet on the
Yeah. I
outcome
know
of
what
the
craps
dice. So
is.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's wild. It's so much fun because like when you're on the button, as they say, Americans, they're so like generally speaking, when you win, everyone else wins. Everyone generally speaking, they bet on the same thing. So like it's like camaraderie, like yay, we've
Yeah.
won, and then like oh we lost, and then and when you're on the sorry, when you've got the dice, you're called shooter, and they're like go on shooter, and you're like yeah, and you like throw the dice, and then you feel great, and then like there's free drinks, like, and it's real like atmosphere. And I was like, oh yeah, I can see how people get addicted to gambling. This craps game is great, especially because I was winning like loads, and I was like, oh, this is really really quite Moorish,
Yeah.
But the roulette the other day, oh, this poor man, I could just see him just pulling out 50s, and I was like, you don't even look well. Like these guys look like they can afford it, but like you just look quite sad, my friend, and like you're just spending so much money. And the young fella, I'm like, oh, you shouldn't be exposed to this. And also it made me consider whether or like reconsider whether I wanted to work in the gaming industry, because I'm like, the gaming industry, that's it's these aren't games, this is gambling, this is the gambling industry. And the casino, like, it was a bit soulless, and it was a bit, you just see some sad characters there that are obviously quite addicted, and I'm like, oh god, do I even want to be a part of this? But then I thought, well, Texas Hold'em poker, it's not, we're not playing against the casino, people are playing against each other,
Each other.
and it's a fun game, and I play it with my friends, that we have a home game, so I feel differently about it. But yeah, I would like working as a croupier, like just watching people just rinse their life savings with crippling addictions. It's a bit of a sad place, if I'm honest.
I have to agree. I think you have to be able to like I don't know. You have to suspend judgment a little bit in order to play in an area like that, because it does bring a lot of people great joy, and it is a game of skill. It's not that it's not a game of
Mm.
skill. Like my cousin is extremely good at poker, and yeah, I know you're not allowed to count cards. I don't know why not though. I'm like, that's the skill, isn't it? I'm like, when you're counting cards, that's the skill. You have a good memory. You know what is likely to come up, so then you know what your odds are. So I don't understand why that's a bad thing. But that is like, there's skill in it. There for sure is skill in being able to bluff and like do all that stuff. So I do think table games are much different than, just gambling at like, craps or roulette or something that's pure chance. That there's really no skill in. But I just wanted to like highlight this comment before we forget. As a power chair user with elevation, I
Mm.
prefer high tables. I don't fit under low tables. This is why everybody is an idiot that doesn't walk in somebody else's or wheel in somebody else's shoes. I am so stupid about other disabilities. And this is just proof of it. I have no idea what the experiences are of anybody else. And I always think that high tables are sucky for everybody. And then look at this, high tables. And you know what? Now I'm thinking about this. My friend Tash, who's a high level quadriplegic, if you guys seen Push, she's the one with the baby. We went to a dinner theater and she could not fit under the table. She had to get like a tray for her legs or
Ah.
something. And it was horrible because she didn't have anywhere to eat. And it was like a million times for us to ask for a tray, like for her knees. So even though I've seen it before, I'm an idiot and I didn't even think about it. Thank you, Jay, for educating me. So yeah, maybe there should be some high tables and some low tables. Maybe that's the inclusive thing. I don't know.
Yeah, you make a good point. I hadn't considered that either, to be honest. I was just looking at it from my Fred centric point of view. I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
yeah. So yeah.
this is a
Oh, I
funny
tell you
one.
what. Oh, go on. Yeah, yeah, go on.
Dealing is dealing, drugs, cards, etc. That's pretty funny.
I got a funny little anecdote from today, right? So I got asked, do you want the gratin or the lasagna? And I'm like, oh, they're providing lunch today. I didn't know they were providing lunch today. I was like, oh, I love the lasagna, thanks. That'd be great. And then on lunch break, I had to message Chris saying, oh, they're providing lunch today. That'd be great. So we all go to this restaurant, and I'm like, oh, this is the restaurant like Chris and I were at yesterday. I was like, oh, nice. I was like, it looked a bit pricey. Luckily, they're paying, right? So because we were going to eat there, but then we were like, oh, we'll go somewhere cheaper. Anyway, the lasagna comes out, and everyone's like, and also people were having beers. It's like midday. I'm like, who has a beer at midday? I mean, it's cultural, it's different, it's France, but like,
Yeah.
and also we're in the middle of training. Like we're going to go back. Anyway, people were having dessert and coffee and stuff. I was like, oh, people are really taking advantage of this free meal. And then
It's not
it
free.
turns out we had to fucking pay for it. And I was like, really? I was like, why didn't you say? Like, we're all going to lunch. It's not free. I mean, maybe there was a conversation like, oh, are you guys paying for it? Like, no, you have to pay for it yourself. Maybe that went like under my radar because it was in a different
Yeah.
language. But like, all I was like, say, le gratin or la lasagna. And I was like, oh, a lasagna. Yeah, that'd be nice. And then we got there and I was like, oh, shit, I've got to pay. I was like, that's like expensive. That's like 17.50. It's I guess it's not out of the world, but like I'm here to learn. I
Yeah.
thought they were treating us to lunch. That wasn't an unreasonable thing for me to assume. And when the bill came, I was like, shit, I'm really glad I didn't like just go all out and start ordering loads of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that's the worst when stuff like that happens and you're like not sure about what's going on. That's really funny. I'm like so cheap about restaurant stuff too because I know how much it costs to make it home because I cook a lot. So every time
Mm.
I see that like and here that's like cheap. A main meal here at a restaurant is like 25 bucks usually, and it's not even that big. Like it's ridiculous. Like it costs
Yeah, yeah,
$200 for me to take my family out to eat. Like it's insane.
yeah,
Not at like McDonald's or something obviously, but even at McDonald's it costs $100 for my family to eat at
yeah, yeah.
McDonald's. Like one person costs 25 bucks at McDonald's. Like it's so stupid.
Yeah.
So that's not actually that bad.
Hey
But when you
Siri, what is 17 euros 50 in Canadian dollars? 28 bucks.
yeah, that's about right. Yeah, so
Yeah.
same. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's not like
crazy.
overly expensive, but like we're
No,
on a
that's
budget.
still
Like
yes,
I
that is expensive. That's expensive. That's expensive.
yeah.
I thought you were like for in my mind it was just 17 bucks because I was like going straight across. But that is expensive. That's expensive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's expensive enough to be like like looped into it without your knowledge. And I did,
Yeah.
and if even if they said you've got to pay for it, I wasn't gonna like be the only one that didn't go. But it's just one of those things where you're like, they're treating us to lunch, how lovely. And then it's like, no, no.
Yeah. Oh, like yeah, everything's expensive. That's like the most irritating thing ever about inflation and whatever's happening here in Canada. Because like there was a girl I watched on TikTok. This is just like a segue because we started talking about like money. But there's a girl in the US who has a TikTok account that she goes grocery shopping and feeds her family of four on a $300 budget, and she only shops once a month. My weekly
Oh wow.
budget is $300, $300 for food for a week, and I get like two grocery bags out of it. Like it's crazy. Like it
Mm.
is insane how much food costs here. Like I just bought maple syrup. That was $20 for one bottle of maple syrup. If you buy like real vanilla here, it's like $50 at Costco. Like it's insane. It's insane.
Oh wow.
One steak is like 40 bucks at the store.
Jesus.
It's crazy how much food costs here. And I'm like, where does that lady live? Because I'm moving there. I still probably double her food budget because she only has toddlers, but still, I'm like,
Mm.
wherever you shop, I want to shop there because it's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Chris has just got back, so we may as well, so we might call it soon
Yeah, let's
because
call it.
but we did have a comment I wanted to address real quick. It'll be a lovely little segue to where did it was from James. It said, I kept watching your shuffling to see if there was a magic trick there. Oh, I've got a great little story from today. So
Okay.
I was a bit shy again. Like speaking French, like is a little intimidating. Like my French is actually pretty good, but for some reason,
Yeah.
not being able to express yourself fully, it just holds you back a little bit. And magic tricks, for example, isn't something I'm actually like familiar with, like explaining. But
Yeah.
I did a really really good magic trick, so I don't have a magic trick today. Sorry, I'm really unprepared. I'm also quite exhausted, and also need a wee, so we're gonna go soon. But
Yeah,
I
me
do have a
too.
funny story. When we were shuffling the cards, I just saw this opportunity. I took it. I know explaining a magic trick is never as good as seeing one, but
Yeah.
basically I was like, oh, do you have you ever seen this sort of shuffle? And I shuffled the cards like upside down, like completely like mixed up, so like they were like face up, face down, face up, face, like completely mixed up.
Cool.
And I said, oh look, have you ever seen this sort of shuffle? And these guys were like, no, like no. I was like, isn't it really weird? I was like, look, but if you imagine that like the cards just instantly just go back, and I spread the cards out across the table, and they were all the right way up, right? But one card was face down, and I said to this guy, I was like, hey, listen, without saying anything, like we haven't said anything before. I was like, do you have a favorite card, like to think of? He was like, yeah, the Roi de Pique, like the King of Clubs.
Yeah.
Turned the card over, it was the King of Clubs, and he was like,
Oh,
no way, how'd you do it? Like, no way, that was amazing, and everyone was like,
that's
that was pretty good.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
See, you need to be the magic dealer, like or something like that. That would be cool.
yeah,
Like you
yeah.
do a magic trick before every. Although then people would be like, something's wrong with the deck. This is not right. So they probably wouldn't let you, but it's still cool. That's awesome. I'm glad that that went over well. In a
Yeah,
card
it was
setting.
really good. Like it was so cool. I really want to tell you like I don't want to ruin it. It was great. Um, but it was really cool because number one, like the deck just switches back, but then there's one card, and I asked him to just think of the card after I was already committed. It was a little bit, it was a bit risky, but I was like, if he does pick this card, it'll be amazing, and he did pick it.
That's I don't. Is that just pure luck?
I'll let you in a little secret. He had a tattoo of the King of Spades. So
Oh,
I was like, I'm pretty confident if I ask him what his favorite card is, it will be the King of Spades. But like there's a thing in Magic called dual reality, whereas like the one guy must think, oh well, he must have seen my tattoo. It's still amazing, but everyone else doesn't know that like he's got a tattoo. So everyone else is like, oh my god, like it seems even more magic like
yeah.
to everyone else. But still, it was pretty cool. Like, and it was a bit risky because he could have picked any other card, but like I was like pretty confident that he was going to pick the King of. Anyway, it also is like a pretty
That
impressive trick.
is very cool. You know what? I think, like you say, most of magic is observation and being able to connect with whatever it is that that person is thinking, feeling, and all of that stuff. So it kind of, I don't like that. I hate that you said that thing to me about the guy with the mentalism thing because now I don't ever believe in like the like psychics and stuff because I really want to believe in them. But I think it's also cool that somebody can connect to somebody in such a way that they can almost read their minds without really reading their minds because I think that is also a very amazing skill. So I'm still going to be in awe of that and
Yeah,
not let it ruin my like wonder when I'm
yeah.
being yeah.
You make a good point, right? So I've seen this YouTube channel recently that's been. Do you know the mentalist Oz Perlman?
I don't think
He
so.
was on Joe Rogan recently. He was on Flagrant podcast. He's doing the rounds. He's like quite notorious these days, and he's brilliant at what he does. And some of the stuff fools me. Some of the stuff I know how it's done. There's this YouTube channel that's like exposing how he does all of his tricks, like going
Oh,
through. And I'm like, what? And I commented, I was like, what's your point, bro? And he's like, this guy's a con artist. He says he can read minds, but he can't. I'm like, yeah, no shit. Mentalism. Oh my god, did you actually believe him? Like mentalism is a performance. It's like the illusion of mind reading. Yes, like when you know how it's done, it's all like any sort of magic trick. It's crushingly disappointing when you know how it's done because guess what? Magic doesn't exist, right? Sleight of hand, misdirection, and he's saying like, oh, this guy's saying he's doing it by reading you and all that. I'm like, of course he's saying that. Like, if he just says, how it's done, I'm not even going to expose the method
Yeah.
here, then what's he supposed to say? And this guy is just such a arrogant knob. He's just like look at this is how he does this trick, and this is how he does this trick. And a lot of the comments were actually really positive, being like, yeah, fuck that guy, like he says he can read minds and he's a charlatan. I'm like, he's not a charlatan, he's a performer. It's
Yeah.
entertainment, my friends. He's not pretending to be a psychic and like rinsing people for money. It doesn't make him a con artist.
Yeah.
And this guy was saying, well, he's selling a book, like if he's like lying to you about how he's doing his tricks, then what's he going to put in his book? And I'm like, what do you, him being immensely successful and like the absolute top of his craft, and from going from wherever, you don't think there's going to be anything valuable in his book? If he's not going to tell you, well, he's not going to tell you how to read minds. I'm like, oh my God. Anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox now, but
Yeah.
like it pissed me off so much.
I
Yeah.
think people that are like expose people for anything, it depends. Like, obviously, if somebody's like hurting people, then you want to expose people. But like you say, if they're not doing anything, it's almost like saying, like, somebody having a YouTube channel showing how like this amazing like chocolatier or chef, it's just a bunch of ingredients that go together and it's not even that special. You're like, yeah, no shit. But I can't make my stuff look like that, and I certainly can't make it taste like that. So I still like it. And I think that's like, do you know what I mean? It's like movies. They make us cry, and we know that person is literally just talking to a camera right in their face to get the close up. They're not even talking to another human being. It's all just illusion. Everything is that we find entertaining. So I'm just like, when people get all upset about that, I'm like, yeah, then never watch a movie again, because you're being fooled. Do you know what I mean? That's not real. Those relationships aren't real. That crying isn't real. That emotion's not real. Yeah, mentalism isn't real. Who cares? And I want to be entertained. I want to have that like suspension of disbelief. I don't want to be like, I don't believe that. No, I'm going to suspend my disbelief and be entertained and awed, because I still think it's cool. And even if I know that it's just because of skills they've obtained, still cool.
Yeah. Or even like, again, like I don't want to expose any methods because I don't think it's right, but sometimes there's gimmicks that are used, like in magic there's all sorts of weird things. Like sometimes when I find out how a trick is done, I'm like, that is so clever. That is so clever. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh my God, that's so simple. Like a lot of the time it's very simple, but it's brilliant. And it's not like, again, it's not about trying to deceive you. Like I love when I'm like doing mentalism with you, because you're like, oh my God, how did you do that? If I just been like, oh, I did it like this, you'd be like, oh, like this is your reaction. Oh.
Yeah.
Which is what his whole YouTube channel was just like, oh, people going, oh, see, that guy can't read minds. So, yeah, anyway.
Yeah. I saw a TikTok of a girl that was doing what looked like mentalism to her husband, but she was showing what she did on the other side that was making him believe that she was reading his mind. And that she was picking all the same answers as him. And it was very simple. It was so simple. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. But anyway, still cool. Like I said,
that's done in more of an entertaining way. But that is called the one ahead method. And that is a definite thing that I've done before as well. Like, but I do it in a more, well, I don't know. I thought that was like fairly obvious. But there is definitely a, I like sometimes with the one ahead, like sometimes when you think about like methods, again, I've said that now, so I've kind of exposed it. But like when you think about something, you're like, no one's ever going to fall for that, right? No one's ever going to fall for that. But without, I guess, exposing it, I kind of almost did. But like, you remember when I said there was that guy at the magic gig who was like, oh my God, how did you know? Like,
yeah,
that was the method I used. And that's actually the first time I've ever used that method, because I was like, no one's going to fall for that. He fell for it so much that he came up to me after the gig and was like, couldn't believe like how I did it. And I was like, oh my God, that's one of the most obvious ones ever. Like there's so many more devious techniques that are so much more hidden.
Subtle. Yeah,
subtle. And I was like, yeah, essentially, like, the answer is because you told me, bro. And then I wrote it down afterwards. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I like, but I couldn't say that to him. And that's the thing. That's like the line with mentalism is like, how do you, because he was like, I know that you did, but how did you read my mind? And I'm like, I didn't read your mind. And in order for me to absolutely convince him that I didn't, I'd have to tell him how I done it. Yeah. And like, I don't want to tell him how I done it. I just said, look, just marinate in the mystery, man. Like, enjoy the trick for what it is.
Yeah.
So that's a weird thing that I struggle with mentalism. Like magic is like you either know how it's done or you don't know how it's done. But with mentalism, you're really pretending to read minds, and you kind of have to like sell it a little bit. And there's a fine line between that and like
Yeah.
yeah.
I think there's a lot of things that like I like I said I don't care to know because why would I want to? And then it loses its fantasy. And that like when I was in Push, the show that I was part of, I don't like reality TV
Mm,
shows anymore because they've lost all of their mystery to me because I know exactly how they're filmed. I know
yeah.
exactly what happens behind the scenes. And I'm just like, this is boring to me because it's no longer a mystery and it's no longer something that I don't know how it happens. So now I'm just like, oh, that's terrible. Whereas I love movies, even though I know
Mm,
like kind of what's behind the scenes because they still I don't know, they still are like it's like a book. You're reading a book, you know it's
mm.
fake, but it's fun. Whereas reality TV show, they pretend that it's reality, but it's not. It's not really
Yeah,
reality. Do you
yeah,
know what I
yeah, yeah,
mean?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
anyway, yeah, we should probably go. You're
Definitely
neglecting
need a
your
wee. Yeah,
yeah, me
definitely need a
too.
wee. But before I go, real quick, one more thing. Really excited to share this news with you. Do you remember I did that trick about the with the banana in the book, and it was for a
Oh
competition?
yeah, did you win?
I came third. No, I came
Oh my
third.
god, that's still amazing.
Yeah. So
Um,
if you want to see it, I can put the link. I'll send you the link if you want. But yeah, it's basically on this guy's channel, and he rates it, and he gave me a 5 out of 5 for the performance and
yeah,
like originality, and he like did like all the top 5 tricks, and I think he had like 12 entries. So came like third out of 12. And the guy who won it
that's
was like a
good.
really good magician. But I've showed it to all my friends, and to be honest, I kind of thought so too. But I thought like my one was better than the second place one,
Yeah.
just because like well I did really. But yeah, maybe I could have got second, but I only missed out on second place by 1 point. So yeah, anyway, really stoked. Came third in a magic competition, first ever magic competition I've ever entered, and yeah, it was really cool.
That is awesome. One before we go, I just want to do this little shout out. Could you, I'm not Emmanuel Shu, can you throw your like Instagram or website or something in the comments? Because his artwork is amazing. So he's a disabled artist and he like works in the film industry, just very cool. I hope I'm getting the right person. I'm pretty sure that it's the same person that worked on like the Superman thing and whatever. But you can throw your thing in the comments if you're still here because it's very cool. Emmanuel Shu, amazing artist. And he has a disability
Cool,
and obviously found a job easily. So I don't know about easily, but
nice,
he works in cool shit. So I just wanted to give that
cool.
shout out. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week, I guess.
See you next Tuesday. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Appreciate it.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.